speaking about the hedonic treadmill, we are on it. If you look back at Nixon, if you look back at Reagan, all of these guys freak people out. Nixon, got prosecuted and basically got pardoned. And you had Ronald Reagan, who came in as an actor. Each successive generation, it seems, that our Overton window, we get content and we get used to a particular frame of reference. And so the next generation that comes in, that frame of reference looks completely normal. When Obama made the point in an interview saying that he would be considered a Republican several years ago, Obama was right. What he realized is that each successive generation of Democrat has basically moved further and further to the right. And as Democrats move further to the right, as they abandon the working class, as they abandon unions, as they came up with the argument if you have nowhere else to go and triangulation and neoliberal policies, etc., they pulled themselves away from the working class. Whereas the working class and the poor ideally had one political party to invest their energies and their hopes into, one political party that would assuage the rough edges of this capitalistic system, at the very least, to pretend as if there's this kind of shared interest. When Bill Clinton took office, that was gone. You had the situation where all of a sudden this group, that this organization that at the very least at some point had a tenuous thread to aspects of the population, that thread was cut. The destruction of welfare, the destruction of Glass-Steagall, the increase in the prison population, the destruction of the Telecommunications Act. Bill Clinton was a horrid president. NAFTA. And what ends up happening is that the Democrat gives cover for policies that a Republican could never get past. All because, hey, that guy's the lefty, and if that guy's doing it, it's perfectly okay. This is the Democratic Party, this incrementalism and this cult of incrementalism. At some point, that needs to change. I have very little expectations for the Biden administration. Starting, I think the black humor charade of the perpetual nobody, Juan Guaido, as being the leader of Venezuela that Joe Biden said yesterday or the other day, basically gets across how this is going to be, the level of disappointment. And I think that disappointment is just the beginning. You can't get mad at Trump for claiming he won a landslide, or for that matter, the people who raided the Capitol because Trump won a landslide and was being cheated, if indeed you're going to turn around and maintain this ridiculous fiction. The ultimate point is that if Joe Biden's objective really is to heal this country, that begins and ends with a sense of shared prosperity, a legitimate sense, in the dejected and the righteously alienated, that America is not just a naked oligarchy, that there are indeed opportunity, and that opportunity is shared. That is not the way it seems, especially with the COVID crisis. $2,000 is what Joe Biden said he was going to basically dispense to the public. Ossoff and Warnock, both of them were able to use that to basically attack their opponents. And for the first time, at least in my awareness, Democrats won a Georgia runoff. Democrats took Georgia. And the talk of the 2000s seemingly has just gone away. I'm making the point that if you want to really deal with the hard ends of our system, then you may need to make structural changes to actually make those bipartisan, or to bring this country into some level of healing. My concern is that Joe Biden has already told the money interests in the proverbial smoke-filled room that nothing will fundamentally change. And the fact of the matter is, healing this nation will require the structures of this country to fundamentally change. This is not the moment for soothing incrementalism. This is the moment to swing for the rafters. Catastrophes are opportunities. Oftentimes, the establishment has used this for disaster capitalism. Think of the Clintons in Haiti, or for that matter, businesses raping Puerto Rico after the hurricane. But Biden is not, or shouldn't be expected to do anything that he didn't do for the 47 years. And for that matter, anything that he wasn't pushed to do. Meaning Biden got in office without any expectations on Biden. So what Biden does will basically be dependent upon, I suppose, whatever Biden wants to do. But there is something to say about the pressures that will be put on Biden. And one of those pressures is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders will become the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee and chairman of the Subcommittee on Health, Labor, Education, and Pensions. Yes, he would have a powerful perch to push legislation and, yeah, to push Biden. Let's hear Sanders, because they are pushing for $15 an hour minimum wage, which will basically be double the federal minimum wage. That will be great. That's assuming Biden would have the stones to go through with it. Let's hear the clip.
Act boldly. You said last year that President Biden could be the most progressive president since FDR. Is that possible in a 50-50 Senate?
Absolutely it is. It's possible. First of all, we hope that our Republican colleagues understand the kind of pain and desperation that is out there and work with us to respond to that desperation.
Do you see any indication of that?
It's too early to tell. I certainly hope that it will happen. But second of all, there are tools that we have. The president has executive orders, which can make a significant impact on the lives of people. And second of all, and I say this as the incoming chairman of the Budget Committee, we have a process, as you know, called budget reconciliation. And that process, for a number of issues, not all, requires only 50 votes plus the vice president. So there is a lot that we can do through budget reconciliation, and I intend to do everything I can to make that happen.
You simplified it well. I'm not going to get into the term reconciliation, but basically the president has a choice. He can choose to go a route where he tries to pass something with 50 votes plus one, or where he tries to get Republican bipartisan buy-in on the big plans. He seems to indicate that he wants to try that bipartisan approach, which it really is at odds, or at least in tension, with what you're talking about.
Well, yes and no. I have no problem with reaching out to Republicans. I would prefer to do it that way. But if we hear very early on that Republicans do not want to act in a way that meets the needs of working people in this country or the middle class, sorry, we're going to do it alone. The truth of the matter is that Republicans used budget reconciliation over the years to provide massive tax breaks to the rich, to try to repeal the Affordable Care Act. We're going to use it to protect working families and the middle class of this country. I'll give you one example. We have a minimum wage here in Washington, national minimum wage of $7.25 an hour.
Sanders is talking about pushing that to $15 an hour and plans on using budget reconciliation to do it. Joe Biden has already said he's on board for this, and so it seems like that's what these guys are going to push. Now, the catch here is if Joe Biden depends on using Republican assistance, he will not get it. Let's play the clip for Ted Kennedy. Ted Kennedy was fighting for a $2 raise over the course of several years. Let's play the clip.
We have considered health issues. We are considering education issues. We're considering additional kinds of tax breaks for wealthy corporations. But do we hear from the other side a willingness, as this side is at this moment, at 12 after 5 today on Thursday? I speak for all of our Democrats and say, we're prepared to vote now. Now. 10 minutes, 15 minutes on this issue. But no, as we have been for the last 5 days, no, we've got other amendments, Senator. We've got other amendments. We've got other amendments to offer. We have now had amendments that have been worth over $200 billion. Amendments that have been offered. We've had amendments on education of $35 billion. We've had health savings amendments that'll benefit average for income of $112,000, $8 billion. We've had those kinds of amendments. And we're looking at the Kall amendment at $3 billion. But we still cannot get a $2.15 over 2 years. Over 2 years. What is the price? We ask the other side. What is the price that you want from these working men and women? What cost? How much more do we have to give to the private sector and the business? How many $1 billion more are you asking? Are you requiring? When does the greed stop? We ask the other side.
That's the question, Shane. When does the greed stop? And if Joe Biden is dependent on Republicans to get this passed, he's either delusional or he's using Republicans for the political point that he doesn't want to get it passed. What are your thoughts?
He will probably use them as a foil, like you're talking about. He will probably use them as justification for not being as aggressive as he could be. But frankly, if he were more aggressive, he'd be called out on it. Not nearly as hard as Donald Trump was, and on that matter, who cares? Just to look at it that way. You want him to be aggressive. I think a lot of folks would be perfectly happy if he were aggressive. But yes, he will definitely use Republicans as a foil, like you're talking about. And you know what, though? I'm going to take us out into a very slightly early break because we have our next guest on. We will be back in just a minute with Mark Sleboda. Thanks for your monologue, Jamarl. We will be back in just a minute. You're listening to Fault Lines with Thomas and Stranahan